アングルピング
Hello gamer boys and gamer girls, it's your boy Pingu. Today I'm here to tell you the tale of Northern Journey, a first-person Metroidvania set in the suburbs of Norway. I know what it might look like,
Hell no, man, what the fuck?
but just trust me on this. This game flew completely under my radar when it came out, and was probably buried under the other quality releases such as NSFW Solitaire and Lust Element Season 1. I first heard about the game from famous Dark Souls man Iron Pinapple last year in his Steam dumpster diving series. More recently, Mandalore also reviewed it too, and it always caught my eye. It gave me a Shadow of the Colossus meets LSD Dream Simulator meets Kingsfield vibe. I feel like the last time I really connected to a single player game this much was probably when I completed Rainworld last year. If you've played that game, you know how much of a compliment that is. And similar to Rainworld, Northern Journey has such a heavy emphasis on its world, exploration, atmosphere, and little fellas. On a Steam page, the dev describes the game as being a Norwegian happy sad game. I have no idea what the fuck that term means, but all I found was a Polish rock band when I googled it, so I think it's a made up term. Honestly though, with how unique this game feels, it's like the developers invented their own Frankenstein of a genre with its unique atmosphere, even if it isn't necessarily the first game to do this exact combination of gameplay. The entire thing was made by just one beautiful Game Boy, pictured right here. And in some of his devlog videos on his channel, he shows himself out in the forests of Norway collecting pictures, videos, and audio for the game, even showing himself throwing rocks, using a slingshot, using a bow and arrow, and just generally exploring the wilderness. These are all hobbies of his, and all of this stuff ends up in the game. He's incorporated things from his real life into Northern Journey, and I honestly think it's really cute. This game feels really personal, and he's clearly poured a lot of himself into it. It took me probably about 3 days to complete, and I couldn't stop thinking about it the entire time. It's extremely impressive how much there is packed in here with no padding or filler. We've got puzzles, exploration in some huge, expansive environments, fast-paced arena shooter sections, and even a little bit of spider exposure therapy. If I can get 1 or even 2 people to check the game out, I feel like I've done my job with the video. The developer has absolutely poured themselves into this game, and I think it deserves more recognition. Although it's currently sitting at an overwhelmingly positive on Steam at recording, I still don't think enough people know about this gem. I won't be spoiling anything too major here, as I want most of it to be a surprise for you. Northern Journey is by no means a flawless 10 out of 10 masterpiece, or anything like that. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can say it will hit the same for you like it did for me. Maybe it was a right time, right place thing for me, but I really had me feeling a type of way from start to finish. It is a masterpiece in its own right that everyone should try. It does some things extremely well and had me hooked from the get-go. So let's get into the 3 things that I think makes this game so damn good. Exploration, level design, and the world are in my opinion the strongest parts of Northern Journey. Apart from it looking like a Norwegian fairy tale on a cocktail of 2CB and acid, the world is genuinely beautiful, and I found myself stopping to stare at my surroundings all the time. Northern Journey always seems to have vistas showing new perspectives on old areas you've already been to, or maybe a quiet reprieve to allow you to digest the horrors that you've experienced so far. The breadcrumb trail of items you'll be finding in the world gradually opens it up as you explore more and more. It was definitely giving me strong Metroidvania or Zelda vibes. I had so many click moments where I found an item to get to a previously inaccessible area earlier in the game. Some of the things you'll find in the world hint at what's coming next too, and some just made me laugh. There are a bunch of interlinking paths and shortcuts in this game too. You'll be lowering ladders, opening one-sided doors, ziplining, gliding, and it all really adds to make the world feel really tangible. Throughout most of the game, the developer absolutely nailed the flow of exploration. You'll regularly be visiting new areas like caves, mountainsides, forests, lakes, and much more. Each new area you visit has some little twist on it to keep it fresh from the last, and it made getting through this game like crack. When you're given a new objective from one of the many freaks and fellas in the game, it will actually show up in your journal. However, there are absolutely no quest markers telling you where to go within the levels themselves. I really love this part of the game. It actually reminded me of my brief time with Morrowind. You pretty much have to remember where everything is inside of a level, or just to rely on the few hints the flute player gives you. I found this to be super engaging throughout the whole game, and it went a long way to encourage the thorough exploration of every area, and really allowed me to soak in the environments. I think a lot of games miss out on this nowadays. Also in your journal, each time you fully explore a new area, it will add a new region onto your map. This generally is just to show the different possible paths to and from from an area, and towards the end of the game it is very satisfying finishing it off. It's almost like assembling a puzzle or something, but I honestly just wish the map was used more outside of just seeing these different paths. For example, there was a point in Greenslit where I had to navigate back to this path down here, and I used the river as a guide, and it just felt amazing to figure that little thing out. I wish there were more of these moments in the game using key monuments to navigate. It would have definitely added a lot to the theme of exploration and hiking. There isn't really any fast travel to speak of in the game, but occasionally it will teleport you back to areas after you've done a lot of backtracking. This is an effective tactic to stop players from gouging their eyes out, and the backtracking that you will be doing has meaningful new content with new weapons, key items, bosses, you get the picture. It seems like pacing was definitely considered a lot in this game. I love how enemies stay dead once you kill them. Really small thing, but it can turn nightmare death runs into these serene hikes through some damn beautiful landscapes, and it just adds so much to the exploration. There are a few secrets scattered around the world for those paying attention too. The two main ones being a standard health upgrade. You only get +1 HP every time you pick one of these things up, and honestly it feels like some sort of twisted joke from the developer. The other regular upgrade that you can find in the world just increases your health kit and ammo capacity, which was actually kind of handy in the end. To my knowledge, there was only one real secret hidden in the world outside of health and ammo upgrades. It was such a world-shattering upgrade, but it's really strange where it's placed, and I could definitely see people missing it entirely. I'll go into that a little later, but I would love to see more hidden upgrades, or just straight up weapons hidden in the world as an additional reward for exploration. The main grip for exploration was just never really knowing what you might stumble into next with its characters and its environments, and it did a good enough job to hook me until the very end. One of the biggest problems with exploration is honestly collision. I feel like the most evil enemy in this game is the fucking environment itself. Fire, baby. Oh! Fuck you, man. I was regularly being yeeted off of paths because a rock was placed slightly too high on a path, and I would end up hitting what the game think is a wall, only to slide off into the abyss below. Now, this didn't happen all the time, but it was very annoying to lose like 10 minutes of progress to something so stupid. Another issue I had was something that comes up in the last third of the game, where it becomes a lot more linear and loses the exploration, which is what I think made the first 2/3 of the game so special. I'm not sure if the developer just wanted to get this game out the door after all the years of working on it or something, or if he just wanted to shake things up a little bit. But at the end of the game, it feels a lot more combat focused. It isn't a bad thing, but speaking of, let's move on to combat in Northern Journey is extremely satisfying. There's a lot of depth and strategy at play here. Even though a lot of the encounters could be boiled down to just running away and slapping enemies with a well-timed pebble, the combination of the projectile speed and crosshair system keeps every encounter super interesting, especially when mixed with the unique enemies. Combat is actually fast-paced here in Northern Journey and borders on an arena shooter at times. Enemies can be pretty damn relentless, and you need to use your speed and range of weapons to your advantage. Every weapon has a unique crosshair and projectile speed. These two simple things make every weapon fill its own role and makes combat super engaging. For example, my favorite weapon, my beloved slingshot, is one of the slower weapons in the game, but it packs a serious fucking punch. The more you rotate the projectile, the more damage it does, but obviously it takes more time before you can throw out a shot. So this leads to a constant risk-reward decision every single time you use it. Do you throw out a quicker, low damage projectile or a slower, high damage one? This in combination with the crosshair, which essentially just shows where and what direction a projectile falls off in, makes even the simple act of sniping a fly out of the air with a rock so satisfying. On top of all this, you get some really great feedback whenever you hit something. The slingshot, for example, leading to this really satisfying thunk noise. My biggest complaint with the whole projectile and speed system is just the enemy hitboxes. I could have sworn my stones were phasing through some of these boys, but maybe I just need to get good. The bosses in the game can vary from a slog to some genuinely exhilarating arena combat, but generally speaking it's the visuals, spectacle, or the context that keeps the bosses interesting. I think more work could have been done here to make the bosses a little more engaging mechanics wise. Some of them are very cool, but a decent chunk of them are honestly just not very exciting to fight. I think the normal enemy counters were a lot more solid and well thought out overall. I'll admit, a few of the enemies can be janky, and the AI can be a little easy to break in the more open areas, but generally speaking the enemies are super engaging and keep things fresh throughout the whole thing. Enemies are implemented extremely well within the context of the levels and interact differently with your arsenal. We have scab sheep, moose with health bar, weeping angel spiders, and floating homunculi demon babies. They all have their own animation patterns, and I swear some are just made to fuck with you. You're constantly juggling between weapons to fit your situation, but for the most part I did just rely on my good old slingshot because I just loved how it felt. Roughly midway through the game, you find a seemingly random power up to the slingshot, which just turns it into a fucking thermonuclear warhead. I barely touched anything else except the super quick weapons after this. I really do wish more weapons could have been upgraded as a result of exploration, just to expand the sandbox a little bit. Maybe there was, but who cares? Slingshot for life, baby. As mentioned earlier, one thing you're going to have to get used to in this game is spiders. When I mentioned spider exposure therapy, I was not lying. I don't think I have ever seen so many goddamn spiders in one game, and I am not exaggerating. It actually becomes comical towards the end of the game, especially if you're paying attention to the dialogue. So, if you're afraid of spiders, I cannot recommend this game enough. Personally, my favourite spiders to fight were these boys that stop moving as soon as you look at them directly. They blend in with the grass, so it's hard to make them out when they suddenly stop moving. This mechanic is actually shown to you a little earlier in the game. I think it's such an interesting, simple mechanic. I just wished it was used a little more in the game. Also, in the opposite side of the same area lives my favourite enemy in the whole game, the Nokken. I really don't want to give anything away about the fella, but he is probably my favourite enemy in the entire game. I just think his design is great and I love him very much. I cannot wait for you to meet him. One issue with combat outside of some light indie jank was surprisingly the audio. The game seems to not have any directional audio whatsoever, and it was really hard to tell where enemies were coming from sometimes, especially things that either blended into the environment or were just flying. You could tell something was getting close to you, and it did lead to some incredibly intense moments, but I'm not sure if that was 100% intentional, and I think directional audio would have gone a long way to make combat slightly smoother. And to bring us to my last point, I'm going to talk about the art, audio, and general atmosphere of the game. The atmosphere is what hooked me into Northern Journey initially. When you step off that boat, hear the electronic synths mixed with the natural soundscape, seeing the mountains, ocean, and a town shrouded in fog with messed up little freaks that inhabit the place, it just sets the tone for the rest of the game perfectly. I was a little confused when I started hearing these synth leads in these type of environments, but as the game goes on and gets a little weirder, it all somehow clicks together and forms such a strong, cohesive aesthetic. Even though it can be very uncomfortable at times, there are lots of moments where the music is just going crazy in the background, whilst you're overlooking possibly a few hours of progress, just letting it all sink in. One of my favourite tracks in the game is from Greenslit. At first, I almost couldn't stand the weird ass lady singing in the background. Now, I don't understand Norwegian, but she is fucking spitting. By the end of it, it became my favourite and most memorable track of the whole game. It is straight enchanting. Another one of my favourite tracks happens at a particular moment in the game. It's this loud, pulsing beat with some Dennis the Menace melodies on top. What, bro? What is happening? And man, I just have to say that I love it. Everything about this game is just so strange, and that's even reflected into the music. I love every single bit of it. Visually, I love the blend of the natural and slightly edited textures with the crusty aesthetic of everything else. I wouldn't say it looks like an old game by any means, as it's clearly going above the limits of older hardware, but it definitely gave off some retro vibes. The game is actually running on Unreal 4, believe it or not, and even though Unreal has very high graphic capabilities, the dev chose to keep it simple for lack of a better term. I don't want to discredit the graphics here at all either. The way everything is assembled together creates such an interesting vibe, and it just adds to the overall experience, I think. On the topic of engines and graphics, instead of using traditional lighting system in Northern Journey, all of the shadows are actually painted into the environment as needed, and I think this just goes a long way and adds so much to the aesthetic. It helps the game run on a potato, and he's just done a masterful job assembling these spaces from both an artistic and a technical standpoint. I cannot wait to see what they come up with next. Although this game contains some of the weirdest NPCs I've ever seen in a game, so weird, I don't even really have a point of reference. I couldn't help but be invested in figuring them all out and just finding out what the hell was going on. I have never seen fellas move quite like this, and you'll be coming across quite a few of these guys on your journey. They all have something to say or something for you to do. Most of the interactions with the NPCs are funny, off-kilter, or just so bizarre you can't help but say what the fuck. And just to briefly touch on it, sound design is another incredible part of this game's atmosphere. Everything has a rough around the edges, distorted or crunchy vibe to it. Everything pops out and it can feel very uneasy at times, especially up close. A lot of the enemy noises sound like auditory schizophrenia, and again just pushes the uncomfortable vibe of the game to the forefront. I really like all these artificial distorted noises, and I think that they are juxtaposed really well with the natural soundscape of the waterfalls, birds chirping, and things like that. It just again adds to the game's atmosphere, and I think that they've done a masterful job at assembling this soundscape. Playing Northern Journey is probably something I'm going to take with me for a very long time. It's a charming, personal, and strange experience, but at its core, it's an extremely well put together game from a very passionate gamer boy. I think more people should give it a go, and I personally cannot wait to see what he comes out with next. Thank you to anybody who's still watching this mess of a video. I hope something I've gushed about today has at least got you interested in Northern Journey, and hopefully enough to maybe even give it a try. If you like the video, make sure to support the channel by subscribing and liking. It really helps me out, and I'm going to be trying to make more content on the channel going forward. I don't have a schedule for you. New videos are just going to come out when they're done, but I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. Appreciate ya. Mwah.